It's 7 o'clock. Welcome to the November regular Board of Education meeting for the Lake Mills Area School District. The mission statement of the district is to prepare all of today's students for tomorrow's opportunities. Ask for verification of the meeting notice.
It was posted on the LMASD website at the Lake Mills Post Office and submitted to the Lake Mills Leader.
Okay, thank you. So the meeting was properly noticed. The next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Would ask for a motion to do so.
I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments? Hearing none on a voice vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will now call the meeting to order, and I would ask if you would join me in a pledge of allegiance to our flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could have a roll call of the members, please.
Brianna Beslick.
Here.
Dawn Delaney.
Here.
Ken Eimers.
Here.
Amy Litcher.
Here.
Robert D'Imperio.
Here. All members are present. We have a quorum. The next item is board reports. The first is Dr. Delaney, the first reading of a board policy.
Okay. At our October Finance Committee meeting, Dr. Olson asked us to consider changes to our existing committee policy, 0155. This change was requested in part due to narrowly defined duties of the Finance Committee that omitted discussions related to the employee handbook that required board approval. Also, our current policy does not mention our policy committee, so there's an oversight. And it was last updated in 2018. So the request is to adopt the Neola policy to replace our current policy to allow flexibility in assigning duties to committees. So you can take a look at both the new policy suggestion as well as the old one. I have another alternative that if we don't want it to be overly generic, we could also convene the policy committee and revise our existing policy to better reflect our committees and their duties and responsibilities.
And so this constitutes the first reading. And if I understood correctly, you're proposing an alternative to the readings?
If we are not satisfied with having an overly generic policy, which is what the proposed revision would be, the Neola one, that's the option, the alternative then would be we could then revise our existing policy to include all our policies and just better update our duties and responsibilities.
Would it be appropriate to have the policy committee meet prior to our next meeting and the final reading of this policy?
We could.
Yeah, Dawn, I know, you had mentioned that too about not leaving it so vague so that it was very clear as far as what the standing committees were. And just when we reviewed this committee policy, it made no mention of the policy committee, which is a standing committee, and then with, looking at possibly renaming finance to personnel and finance, I thought that necessitates a policy change. So, right, however, whatever the board's desire is in doing that, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Right. So, if we want to keep it real vague, we could go that direction, or we could have the alternative, which would be just to revise our existing policy to be more reflective of what we actually wanted to do.
Well, I would suggest that the policy committee meet and,
Okay.
If so inclined, provide that modified policy.
Okay.
Okay, the next report is from our student member, Sydney Williams, the senior class president. Ms. Williams.
Hi, so like he said, hi, I'm Sydney Williams. I'm the senior class president, and I'm here to give you some updates on the high school. So recently, most of our fall sports have ended, and to recap each of them, for tennis, Claudia Curtis, like I said at the last meeting, went to state, and she won her first match at state against Bigfoot, but unfortunately lost the second day of state in her second match to Brookfield Academy. But Claudia was also named Conference Player of the Year for tennis. For volleyball, they went 10-0 in conference, with winning their first conference title in over 20 years. Also, they won a regional championship for the first time since the 80s, but unfortunately lost the sectional semifinal to McFarland. Also, one of the members of the volleyball team, Ava Belling, was named Conference Player of the Year for volleyball. For football, they went 8-7 this season, with winning a second conference title within the last 20 years. Cross country this season has had 12 runners have lifetime personal records, as well as a few runners who were very close to qualifying to state but just missed it. Soccer was 10-3 this season, with this being the ninth year in a row they beat Lakeside. This year they moved up to D3, which meant harder competition they would face in the postseason. Unfortunately, their season ended with a loss to Mount Horeb in the regional final, but they had Jalen Ortega, who was named Conference Player of the Year for boys soccer. And lastly, for mountain biking, they placed 10th in the state this year. And to recap all of our fall sports, we will be having our annual fall sports banquet tomorrow at 7 p.m. For the musical, as some of you may know, was this last weekend. They performed Emma, a pop musical. They put a great performance on for all three of their performances at the high school, and they really appreciated help from parents as well as the community's support. And lastly, the academic meet was last week, and they had a first place finish in this year's Capital Conference Academic Bowl, with Nora Fitzgibbon finishing first in the English 10 individual test, and Ian Saylor finishing first in the general physical science. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, administrative reports, Dr. Olson.
All right, it is my honor to welcome our FFA students up to the podium. They have a presentation to make on their national trip to Indianapolis, and so with the board approval of that a couple of months ago, I asked them to come and share with us what they learned at that conference.
Good evening. My name is Luke Wiedenfeld, and I'm the agriculture teacher and FFA advisor here at Lake Mills High School. And tonight I have 8 of my FFA students with me. Recently, on October 27th through the 30th, we attended the National FFA Convention in Indianapolis, Indiana. We had 12 students from Lake Mills High School that attended, and they put together some slides to talk about their trip. So to start with, I told them I wanted them all to introduce themselves, so they're going to tell you their name and their grade and one of their favorite FFA activities at the high school.
Hello everyone, I'm Kenzie Nielsen and I'm serving as the Lake Mills FFA chapter president this year. I'm also a junior this year and I'm also involved with basketball, track, and some other clubs as well. My favorite thing about FFA is going to leadership workshops and meeting a ton of new people and just really learning more about FFA, spreading agriculture, while also being led by state officers and getting advice from them as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Olivia Olson. I am this year's vice president for Lake Mills FFA chapter. I'm a junior. One of my favorite things about FFA is growing as a leader and as a person, as an advocate for agriculture. I have a supervised agricultural experience in sheep production, and one of my favorite things is getting involved in speaking contests.
My name is Taylor Willeen. I am a sophomore, and I am serving as the treasurer for the FFA chapter. One of my favorite things is the bonds I create with people from different schools, and also the bonds created for all of the people that are here today.
Hello, my name is Nadia Karomi. I am serving as the reporter this year for the FFA. My favorite activities in FFA include I show and raise dairy steers, and I have an SAE in dairy production, and yeah.
Hello, my name is Bo Buckles, and I am a junior in high school, and my favorite activity is the National Convention.
I am Bo Schrader, and I'm a sophomore, and I'm the student advisor this year. I show pigs at the Jefferson County Fair, and one of my favorite FFA activities is helping in concession stands and going to National Convention.
Hello, my name is Victoria Moldrink. I am serving as the parliamentarian this year. I am a junior, and one of my favorite things about FFA is being involved in all the different competitions we do and meeting all the new people we do get to meet at each stop we make.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Brandel. I'm a sophomore this year, and I'm currently serving as a sentinel for our FFA chapter. One of my favorite activities in FFA is taking not only the knowledge that is provided in the classroom and taking it to my family farm and providing it for everyone there, but all the bonds and all my friends are made through FFA.
So at this time, I'll turn it over to the students. They've worked hard putting together some slides, and they have some photos from the convention. But before they start, one thing I just wanted to say, and I wanted to especially recognize one of our students, Olivia Olson. When she was at the National FFA Convention, she represented our school and the state of Wisconsin in the National FFA Creed Speaking Contest, and she took second place at Nationals. So we're really, really proud of Olivia for her hard work and efforts, and you'll see her picture in a couple of the slides too. Okay, so I'll turn it over to the kids.
Alrighty. So basically, I wanted to start off by saying how thankful and blessed that we all are that we got the opportunity to go on this trip, as other chapters weren't because of the rules with COVID. We learned a lot, and we met a ton of new people, learned their stories, learned what their chapters were like. So as you see, our trip here, our first stop was at Wolf Park, which was a pretty cool experience in Lafayette. Then we went around the Lucas Oil Stadium a few times to see like sessions and things like that. So all my football fans, pretty cool. And then we went, one of my favorite parts was Cracker Barrel because they had good food, and me and Olivia may or may not have been line dancing, and the whole restaurant was like clapping for us. It was pretty cool. Alrighty. Is this my side? Yeah, okay. So the drive down, we traveled with Watertown and Waterloo FFA, which was an amazing experience to be able to bond with them and again learn what their chapters does to help our chapter better and grow. Then at Wolf Park, we learned a lot about wolves' behavior and their activity. We saw bison and also red foxes, and the wolves there were so well trained. It was amazing to see how they worked with the trainers there. Alrighty. Cool. So day 2, session 1 was our first stop. We were up and at 'em pretty early, and we were on the bus by 7:15 for our 8 o'clock session. Our keynote speaker this year was Courtney Dehoff. Her main idea of her speech was her key card, and this I'll probably take with me for the rest of my life. During her end years of college, she had this internship, and she was given this key card. And when her internship was over, she just kept swiping the key card and kept showing up. And then she told us, she had asked many of times, how did you end up on the biggest national TV station in America? And she said, I just kept showing up. So I'll take that with me through sports, through FFA, through other academic activities, to just keep showing up and keep putting in the work. Also, she told us another thing that stuck with me was, whatever your big, crazy, wild dream is, just keep showing up, because one day you might just show up on the biggest stage of agriculture, which was hit home pretty well because, like, coming from a smaller town, and it just shows us that we can dream big and reach those goals.
Piggybacking off of what Kenzie said, I know as soon as we finished listening to the keynote speaker, I looked over with kind of tears in my eyes, and Kenzie did as well. So I think it means a lot to us as FFA members to be able to learn from experiences from people who are were once in our shoes and are so successful now. So I think that a lot of what Kenzie said, it resonated with me too. After the first session, that was on Thursday morning, and we got to then go and explore the Expo Center. And later that afternoon, we went and attended the second general session for the National FFA Convention. At this session, there was the retiring address for one of the national vice presidents, as well as the career development event and leadership development event awards that were being announced at that time. This is where students who had competed in all of these different competitions were able to go up on stage in front of thousands of people at the Lucas Oil Stadium and be accepted their awards and hear their placings. I was blessed with the opportunity to be among some of those students, and that was for the FFA Creed Speaking Contest, as Mr. Wiedenfeld had mentioned earlier. For the past 22 months, I have been working on the the FFA Creed Contest, and this past summer, I was named the Wisconsin State winner for it. In August, I competed in an online national preliminary contest against the 48 other state winners, and had the opportunity to come back and compete in the top 16 in the country at National Convention, which have brought so much meaning for my convention, and I know every single one of us has meaning to it, which makes me so incredibly grateful that we had the support from our school board, because I know that there were some chapters that weren't quite so lucky and quite so fortunate as we were. From the 16 I competed in, was selected to be a part of the top 4 in the country and competed there, and then was on stage during session 2 where they announced that I was the national runner-up. So that was an experience of a lifetime for me, something that has been, like I said, 22 months in the making now. I have learned so much from it. My skill set has grown tremendously because of it. And like I said, this is all thanks to the amazing support that we have from all of you. So once again, I'd like to say thank you.
Okay, so one thing on day 3 in the morning, we had a competition of who could get the most pictures with the most states. Of course, I won. I had 45 states and Puerto Rico, if you wanted to know. So we had fun walking around the Expo Center and like seeing all the states there. Alaska was even there. It was cool to see everyone.
On Friday evening, we went to the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo. This experience was really cool as it was my first rodeo. Some of my favorite parts from this experience was just seeing the bull riding, meeting the rodeo clown, and seeing Dusty Dickerson pull some really neat stunts on her horses throughout the trip.
Okay, now to day 4. Not gonna lie, on day 4, my feet were hurting just a little bit, but we made it through it. But on the way home, we toured Fair Oaks, which was super, super cool. Like, I've never seen so many cows, like, in my life. Like, compared to, like, Fair Oaks to my farm, I was like, this is amazing. So it was super cool. And then we got to look, like, they had us stand somewhere, and it was, like, all windows. And then we got to use a little screen, and like there's little cameras, and we got to see the robots work to milk the cows. That was super cool. And then there's like cows there. We got to draw on them with like chalk, and it was so cool. And then they had fun obstacles there, and we saw pigs and cows. It was amazing.
The Fair Oaks, we got to see how they have 2 different types of milking systems. They had a carousel parlor there. We did not get to see the carousel parlor, but we did see their robotic milkers, like Ashley said. And Mr. Wiedenfeld, me, and Nadia, we went to tour the plant portion of their farm, and we got to learn about how different farmers throughout the years harvested and planted all their crops. We got to see as far back as the 1930s, I believe it was, and it was really interesting to see how everything has changed so much since from the 1930s till now.
once again, we all want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. It was truly amazing. These pictures here on the right top, those are the Pennsylvania state officers. Me, Olivia, and Ashley got to all meet them, and they were some pretty energetic, pretty amazing people, and it was a lot of fun. And then our Instagram is at Lake Mills High School FFA. You guys have any questions?
No, you are a very impressive group of young men and women, and you certainly represented your school and your community to the highest level, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much.
I also want to thank Mr. Wiedenfeld, who gave up a weekend with his family also to take a group of students out of the state, and his commitment to agriculture and the FFA organization in the district as well.
Thank you.
All right, a couple of other quick updates. So our facility survey is still open until November 15th, so that will be closing very quickly. When I last checked in with school perceptions, there were 707 responses last week. There was a reminder that was sent out late last week, and there'll be one final reminder. And so once that closes, again, they will be, school perceptions will be here to present the findings from that survey in a report form. And so we'll be hearing from them in a month from now. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to go into the face covering discussion now, or did you want to wait for that until we get down to the action items?
I think it would be simpler if we dealt with that as an action item.
Okay, that's what I was kind of thinking. It might be a little more comprehensive. Then I will go down to another quick one, the key work of school boards. I put some information out to the school board. This is a basis for not only the Wisconsin School Board Association, but also the National School Board Association. It's just a tool that they have for school boards to basically reflect on how do we, I should say you, I'm not part of the board, but how do you operate as a board together, looking at the standards? Are there things we can improve? Are there things we need to tweak? What are we already doing that's really, really strong? It's just kind of basically an evaluation, self-reflection tool for yourself. So School Perceptions does offer that as a free tool for the state of Wisconsin, and you would each individually take really your own survey. The results would be compiled, and then we could look at the results as a board together. If we really wanted a formal report, School Perceptions does charge for that. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but it's just basically, I think, a jumping off point for starting a discussion, and it's totally up to the board as to whether you want to pursue that. I do have the survey information, so I can put that out to the board, and you can possibly look at some of that information in January. I'm seeing is typically when I see boards do that.
Do we have a consensus that we would like to participate?
We'd like to, yeah, I think we want to participate, but we don't need the formal report.
No.
Probably not.
All right, and then I'm going to go back up to the greenhouse project and the site engineering. I know the agriculture students have had a pretty exciting week. Last week we did dedicate their small animal barn that they had received a grant for, and it's a beautiful barn. And so continuing with the egg education, as I presented several times here at the board meetings already, that we're working towards the greenhouse. Well, I attribute this to remodeling your kitchen in your house. As soon as you open up one wall, there's something else and something else. And as we got going with the greenhouse project, and we had the engineers back there, we just saw the need for really a lot more earthwork as part of that project. And it's one of those things where you don't want to pour concrete footings and put a greenhouse up and then try at a later date to get backhoe or other excavating equipment back there to try to do the job right to remove the water. And I think what really spurred that conversation was the video clips that I presented, or some of the pictures at the board meeting, where after we had a really hard rain, we had several big puddles, we had water that was actually going into the wrestling room and some of the other classrooms down on that lower level. And if you can picture what it looks like behind the school, you've got almost this L shape. So it's going back into that shed. So in order to take the water and drain it all the way around that corner and out to the drainage ditch, there was a lot more work involved with that than what we originally thought. And it also did involve some sewer permits with the city. And so anyway, it ended up being closer to that $200,000 mark just for the site work and the engineering that goes into that project. But I think once that's done, it will be well worth it just to offset any future problems that we have with water back in those classrooms. Obviously, we have a new addition, and with adding on to that area, we don't want any water seeping back into those classrooms. So I know Rod has been working with me on this project, and I feel like once we do this, we'll have done it right. Bob and I had a conversation about the fact that we did put money into fund balance last year. Fund balance, the use for that is really a one-time expense that we, especially for facilities, when we have issues like that that we need to take care of. So my proposal would be, as we complete that project, that we do it the right way, and then I can take care of the coding of those unique things. But when we go into the action, I'll actually ask you to, for approval of the whole site plan. That also includes us holding the contract for Schweigert's Concrete as well, which, because they're a non-union shop, I will need to hold at a district level. So I know I put up kind of a lengthier explanation for that, and not sure if you have any other questions for me along the way.
Well, that item is an action item.
That is an action item later on.
we
So
can-
we've been
we can-
working on it behind the scenes for quite a while.
Right.
But like I said, I'm confident once we get this project done that this will take care of some of the other issues that we have back there with not even being able to. I feel bad for our FFA kids to even try to walk out the back door of the ag classroom and walk, if they had to walk to the new greenhouse, it would be quite the muddy mess back there. Once that paving gets done, we will slide the new animal barn up along the side of the school. You'll see like there's a fence there now that will all get taken out during the project, so that fence will not be put back up there. But thinking the egg barn will go right in that location. So right now, Findorf is helping us, actually I should say Hamburg, one of the contractors is helping us with that because that is on site. So they will jack that up and move it out of the way, and then they'll come in and excavate the site and help us move everything back into place. Just a quick timeline. I was pretty insistent during the project that the concrete footings be poured now, because if we would wait till spring, as you know, that's all weather dependent, and that could be March, that could be April. And so I wanted to make sure that that greenhouse was installed in time to be able to use it for summer school, and hopefully sometime in May with our agriculture classrooms that we'd be able to get a little bit of time in there, especially for our kids that are seniors. So by having that work done now, on April 1st, we're first on the list to be able to come back and then get the greenhouse put on. And then usually with paving, they don't like to pave until it stays above 50 degrees at night. So hopefully that would be in April as well. And then that'll be the last piece of that project, is the paving will go in all the way around and connect up with the current paving over by the fitness center. So any questions on that project?
Is the work that's been done to prevent the water from going into the school, the drainage, does that get attached to the greenhouse project, or is that just
No.
more maintenance? Or
So as far as the water coming off of the roofs and things like that, that'll tie into the the storm sewer. The greenhouse actually has to be hooked up back into the building, into our wastewater. We weren't able to run the greenhouse sink or anything like that out to the storm sewer. That was per the city, and that's because of the chance there's fertilizers or any kind of pesticides or anything like that. They didn't want that going into the storm sewer. So we got kind of two different connections going on there. Nice thing is the greenhouse will now be hooked up to gas versus having the LP tank on the outside of the building.
Okay, thank you. Next is community input. We have 3 individuals who have asked to speak. I would ask if you come to the podium when called, state your name and address. Each person will be allocated 3 minutes to speak. The first person is Andrea Graham.
Hi, I'm Andrea Graham, 420 Wakeman Circle. I am here to express my gratitude to many people in our school community. To the board, thank you for your decision to follow the guidance of our health department and require masks in schools this fall. My children have been able to stay in school and maintain the in-person instruction that's so important for their social and academic development. I want to extend thanks to my children's teachers, Mrs. Barkenquist and Mrs. Cordy. We've had a wonderful start to the school year, and my kids are excited and happy to go to school every day. The teachers are consistently communicating with us about what is happening at school and how our children are doing. They're responsive to questions and concerns. Most important, they make learning fun and inform positive and caring relationships with my kids. I want to thank the rec department as well. They run a welcoming and engaging after-school program. My son loves attending after school, and we appreciate the time for structured activities and also lots of outside and free play so that the kids can decompress after a long day. Finally, I want to thank Amanda Thompson for communicating with families about curriculum and that's being delivered at school. I recently sent her an email with an article that I found thought-provoking that pertained to her reading and writing curriculum. I received a very thoughtful and thorough response explaining the components of our curriculum. She explained the why and how of our curricular materials and touched on the areas where the district is striving to improve and implement the most up-to-date and science-based instructional strategies. I am also very happy to see the adoption of the new science curriculum as well. Is our school district perfect? No, but I can see and feel that the adults taking care of our children each day have the best intentions at heart and are working diligently every day to deliver high-quality instruction in a safe and nurturing environment. So thank you. The work is not going unnoticed.
Sandy Whistler.
Hi, I'm Sandy Whistler, 303 Moss Street. On Friday night, I was able to attend the production of Emma at Lake Mills High School. It was another reminder to me that our public schools are truly the heart of our communities. Our public schools welcome all students, regardless of their backgrounds and abilities. They tailor academic programs to meet the needs of those students and provide extracurricular activities for all to participate in. Everyone in our community benefits from our public schools, whether it's for Friday night entertainment, having a well-educated workforce, or raising responsible citizens. I'm here tonight to highlight that next week, November 15th to 19th, is American Education Week, a week in which we celebrate our public schools and the team of people who work in them, from the bus driver and classroom teacher to the cafeteria worker and administrative staff to our local school board members. On behalf of Citizen Advocates for Public Education, I want to thank all of the people who are on our LMASD team. And as a substitute teacher, I get to see firsthand the amazing things our team does for our kids every day. I see the cafeteria workers delivering breakfast to our classrooms, custodial staff cleaning the lunchroom after 500 plus kids have eaten there. Our administrative assistants patiently answering phone calls while admitting visitors to the building and putting bandages on little fingers. Our teaching assistants providing support for our students with disabilities so they can be successful in a regular classroom. And our teachers, even while they're eating lunch, constantly reflecting on their teaching and making modifications so that all students can succeed. As we celebrate American Education Week and our public schools, please know that all of you on our team, including our school board members, are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Mary Klein.
Good evening. Mary Klein, 943 Stony Road here in Lake Mills. During the Pledge of Allegiance, we say one nation under God. Our nation certainly hasn't been acting like this lately. There are other entities that I feel think they are gods, and that is not the case. From the federal government all the way down to our local government and school board, they seem to have the mentality that they can do and decide whatever they please. Yet you are all forgetting that we, the people, elected you. God is our only leader that we should be following, not you and not the president. During my grandfather's funeral 8 years ago, the pastor talked during his sermon about how the day you are born, God knows the day you'll go home. There's no fighting that. So I'm not really sure why people are super scared of a virus with a 99% survival. God also gave us our children for us to make decisions on and not the schools. If people are this scared of this virus and pandemic and want everyone in masks, then they should stay home in their houses. If you're this afraid for your children, then keep your kids home as well. We all want to go on living our lives unmuzzled and unafraid. You could be a hermit living at home, never leaving your house, and have a freak accident that could kill you. Why live your life in fear? Live your life as you see fit, and I will live my life, and my children will live their lives as we see fit, unmasked and unafraid. Parents should be making the decision on whether their child should wear masks or not the school board and not the teachers in the schools. If the masks work so well on those that want to wear them, then me and my child not wearing them should be fine according to the science. Jefferson County's epidemiologist spoke a few weeks ago during the quarterly health department meeting about how Jefferson County was on a 3-week downward trajectory with COVID cases. So why weren't the masks taken off the kids then or made optional? Why wait for a meeting to do that? Our children are ours, given to us by God to take care of, not for you to take care of. And for the parents that have immune-compromised children, what did they do before COVID to keep them safe? I know if my child had immune-compromised problems, that would be on me to keep them safe and figure that out with the school. I wouldn't expect the whole school to wear masks to help protect my child when that is my place to do. We need to get back to being the great community that Lake Mills can be and come together again and not let COVID keep us apart. COVID is here to stay, and we need to learn to live with it, just like in past years. If your child is sick, keep them home from school. Our schools never shut down in the past or switched to virtual learning over a cold or flu season. We didn't mask kids then either. I feel the masking of the kids is what's making these colds worse because they aren't breathing the oxygen in like God intended us to breathe in. Take the masks off of our children's faces and let the parents decide what is best for our children. Thank you, and let's go, Brandon.
Okay, thank you all for joining us this evening and sharing your views. The next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. It includes the approval of the following items: the October 11th regular meeting minutes, the October 11th Finance Committee proceedings, the October 25th special meeting minutes, October's treasurer's report, and vouchers and invoices and personnel report. Entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda, or if there is an item on the consent agenda that a board member would wish to discuss separately.
I'll move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Dawn Delaney.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher. Aye. Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio.
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Next item is the approval of the Lake Mills Area School District Safety Plan. It is my understanding that this plan is an update from an existing or previous plan. Is that correct?
Correct. School boards are required to review their plan annually, and we did meet as a group before the start of the school year, along with the police department. And so then, as you can see in the public content, that we're required to submit that annually to the Office of School Safety.
So I would ask for a motion for approval of the 2021-22 Lake Mills Area School District Safety Plan.
I move the board approve the 2021-22 Lake Mills Area School District Safety Plan and note that it contains confidential information that will not be shared with the public.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion
That's a
on the motion.
state statute. If the reason why the Office of School Safety has that as a rule is because if everybody's safety plans, along with all their evacuation sites and what they would do, we would have people targeting school districts and anticipate that. I think a good example of that is as police departments analyze school shootings across the United States, you'll see different laws changing. For example, one of the recent things that has changed in the past is we were required to do unannounced fire drills. Well, once we had the one school shooting in a different state where this fire drill was pulled and everybody walked into the line of fire, then that rule was changed that we were allowed to announce fire drills. So just that is something that the Office of School Safety does not want out, because they do not want people to have access to the safety plan, because that would be at odds with that. That is not a school district rule, that is a state of Wisconsin, or could be a federal rule too. I know it's at least in the state of Wisconsin, a rule.
Board members, discussion on the motion? Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Dawn Delaney.
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio.
Aye. Safety plan is adopted. The next item is the revisions to the safe return plan. Dr. Olson, if you could give us a description of what those revisions may consist of.
All right. Like what was noted in public comment, we have seen a decline in the county. This week we've seen a little bit of an uptick in the county and in the school district, but since the beginning of the year, I feel like we've done a very good job of mitigating risks, and that is different layered strategies. Face masks are not the only strategy that we can use, and we've gotten a couple of other things in place since then. So one of I think the biggest things that's been helpful lately is the addition of the COVID testing that we've done on Mondays and Fridays, and we haven't done, but is offered as a service at the district office out in the parking lot Mondays and Wednesdays. Additionally, within the last week, Jefferson County has added 3 days of testing at Johnson Creek in the outlet mall. So there's a lot easier access to get COVID testing now than was before. So it's we're offering the rapid testing and the PCR, so within 15 minutes, people can wait in their cars. You can rule out if you've got just the common cold or if you have COVID and not try to just guess or wait for several days till you get test results back. With the advent now of the pediatric vaccine for ages 5 through 11, that has already started rolling out countywide. I know I've talked with people who already have appointments for their children, so I think that's another layer of protection if you so choose to do that. So I know people have been waiting for a metric for when we can start loosening up our masking restrictions. And so I've presented something here. I've talked with quite a few other superintendents in the state, and so this is not, I think, something that's just local to this area, but that I've seen throughout the state, and now with Dane County also announcing that they will not re-implement their face covering mandate as of November 27th. I know that even our neighboring schools are looking at a metric for unmasking as well. So after talking with several others, we looked at that 2% rule where with less than 2% or greater than 2% of the population in the building, that there would be more than 2% of the positive cases, that we would possibly look back at re-implementing just a situational masking for that building for a term of 14 days. And I would say, just like with any of other mitigation practices that we did last year and this year, once we get into it and we see how it works and see if it makes sense, there's always opportunity for further revisions, but I'm just starting here. So unfortunately, I think our data is going to look pretty bad this Friday yet. We had more positive cases than we've seen since the beginning of the year, and you got warmer weather, you've got Halloween, you've got time off school, and just a lot of different activities going on, and so we did just see some transmission among some of the kids and some of the adults in our area. I would expect that would go right back down again once things calm down. But other than that, we've been averaging about 3 cases a week since the beginning of the school year, so we've done very well. And I'm going to say right out, it would be one thing with those 3 cases a week if kids were completely wearing their face masks with fidelity, but they don't. So as I'm walking through any one of the buildings, it's a constant reminder for teachers, say, pull up your mask, pull up your mask. Kids are talking, it's falling down, they don't realize it. So after talking with many staff members as well, they're kind of at the point where they don't want that to be the only conversation that they have with students, is those constant reminders to pull up face masks. I would go back to the fact I was subbing again today, and so students are unmasked in the classroom right now. They're unmasked during breakfast time, they're unmasked during their snack time, they're unmasked also during a lunch hour as well. We've also looked at what has been going on after school, so we did have a pretty successful fall athletic season. We did have many crowded gymnasiums during volleyball. I was there at a lot of the matches. We did not see transmission at that point, or at least nothing that would lead us back to anything with athletics. So I think it's time that we implement this metric. And so what I have in there at the bottom also is that this would not be a daily monitoring. Right now, I do meet with Tony Zastra, our school nurse, and we do meet on Fridays at 10 o'clock. We go over the COVID data for the week. I'm in constant communication with the Jefferson County Health Department, so I do get notifications of positive cases, but I think just for ease of this plan and not be flipping back and forth, we monitor it on Friday. If something needs to change because we do see an outbreak or some significant transmission, we can implement it at that level. I do have a caveat for more classroom-based, outbreaks. That is honestly what we are seeing right now. When you look at the overall numbers from this past week, and so most of our data came in Friday night through Sunday morning. So kudos to Tony, who was working Sunday morning and called me to go through this. But it was really like classroom-based. So when you see like the numbers at the middle school, and it looks like there's a lot of numbers, it's really limited to a specific section in 5th grade and some transmission that we see in 8th grade. So I guess what I'm going back to is what I stated at the beginning of the year, is just giving myself some flexibility as well as we monitor these cases to look at some of this situational masking if it is needed. Otherwise, overall, I think our schools have done a fantastic job. We've had little to almost no positive cases at the high school since the beginning of the year, except for, like I said, this past weekend with a little bit of an outbreak. My proposal would be that this is implemented immediately, even though we can't, and I should say by next Monday, but as I look at these numbers, I think our numbers still at the middle school and high school will be too high to immediately implement that. At the elementary school, we're asking to wait until January 3rd because I know there are several parents that do have concerns about the health of their children and do want that opportunity to have their child vaccinated. The vaccine is 2 shots, 3 weeks apart, and that will allow them, as they get going in November through December, to be able to have that opportunity to be immunized. And also I know I've gotten a lot of questions on, are we just going to immunize kids without parents' knowledge? Absolutely not. We are not even testing for COVID without any parents' knowledge. We don't do any of that. So there's no intention of testing without consent. We would never do that. And as a side note, we are not bound by the OSHA guidelines right now because we are a public entity. So even as far as a staff vaccine mandate, we are not bound by that at this time right now. So there are no mandates. Talking with the health department, it sounds like there would not be a child vaccine mandate for years and years, from what I've heard. That to be able to require that takes quite a few years to get into place. So if parents are concerned about that, it sounds like that would be a long way off if ever required. So it's not, I'm going to say, it's not a perfect plan, but like I said, we do watch what's going on in the schools very, very closely. I would agree with our person who talked in public comment is the biggest thing is if your child is sick, please keep your child home. That helps us. Or consider just getting tested and just ruling that out with the children. It does look very much like a cold or, a short fever, but it does help us reduce the transmission in the schools. What we've seen right now is most of our student cases have stemmed from their parents. So that's up until now where we've seen the transmission up until the last few days. So, and parents have been really pretty good at keeping sick children home, which is why I think we haven't seen a lot of positive cases in the schools right now. So,
okay. With that explanation, I would entertain a motion, and there is a suggested motion, I believe.
I move to approve the face covering guidelines as presented. If any details are changed, it will be important to be specific and repeat the motion that is on the table before the vote so that it is understood by all.
Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion? So the chair seconds it so that we can have a discussion on the motion.
Just,
go ahead.
okay. Just so that everyone understands, the motion is to approve and I'm going to read specifics from the memo. For students and staff in grades 7 through 12 and the district office, face coverings will be optional effective November 15th. If the percentage of students and staff absent due to positive COVID-19 cases exceeds 2% of the total student and staff population in the building, the face covering requirement will go into effect for a minimum of 14 days. And then another part of that recommendation is effective January 3rd, face coverings will be optional in grades early childhood, 4K through 6th grade. If the percentage of students and staff absent due to the positive COVID-19 cases exceeds 2% of the total student and staff population in the building, the face covering requirement will go into effect for a minimum of 14 days.
And I think that another thing that needs to be noted is that Face coverings will remain optional for all students K-12 before and after school hours, as well as outdoors, which is the current policy. So, discussion on the motion.
Sure. Well, it is, I think, I think we've learned a lot. It's a strong plan. Generally, I will say the thing that I have been struggling with is at the Jefferson County level, from what I can see, the numbers haven't plateaued. They're still going up. And even if they plateaued, they'd be about at the point where we were just a few weeks after the initial vaccines were available. So to me, we're clearly still in Jefferson County in a pandemic type situation. Now
I guess I would disagree with that from the standpoint, that we have to keep an eye on our schools, and that is why I made the motion at the 2% exceeding the total population. And that's where I feel like we're going to keep an eye on the schools versus all of Jefferson County.
Yeah, and that's a really, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, that's a really good point in the sense that at some point, that will be the big driver of the plan, our ability to respond quickly, as you say. So I'm acknowledging that. I'm concerned, I guess, in one sense that, I mean, the numbers in the school are reflective of how well our mitigation strategy is working. It's not quite as reflective about what's happening, around Jefferson County.
And I was going to make a note of that. So, I mean, that's where, I've hesitated to use the county data. Because number one, we do have Fort Atkinson, which, not that it's the general public of Fort Atkinson, but between the hospital and different entities there, they do have higher numbers, which I feel kind of skews some of the county data. But after, our Jefferson County Health Department meetings, time and time again, the health department has noted, like, wow, Lake Mills has been lower than all of the other cities in the county. We haven't had the outbreaks until now, and I think there's other factors contributing to that. But so that's why I kind of go back and forth. Yes, we're right next to Dane County. We're right next, we're in the middle of Jefferson County, but yet we do control what we can control here in Lake Mills, and going back to what can we control in our old schools. And as we start looking at those layered practices, I think we are able to control, the spread and what happens in our schools. I think last year was another good example as well, as, we really looked at what was happening just on our school, in our school district, versus looking countywide. So, I guess I feel pretty confident that we can keep COVID out. We, have the data, and if it continues to spike, well, we've got the situational masking, there, and we implement it. But it's going to take more than just masking to hopefully get us through this hump. It's the vaccination, it's the testing, it's staying home when you're sick, it's all of those different, things that are going to help reduce those numbers overall. So I would expect, I know January and February will probably be rough months. They're rough months every school year because of colds and flu and things like that. We see high absences. So we'll continue to watch all of the data as we move forward.
Yeah, so as I was listening to everyone speak, I think, as I've been thinking through things, the important piece is for us to, yes, consider this, because we've always said we don't want masks for, the indefinite time. And so where are we going to make that cut? And so,
looking from the teacher's perspective, we always give kids all of these strategies for reading and for math, and we never pull that scaffolding out until they're ready for it. And I think we really have to be conscious in providing the kids and families who feel they need that layer to get them there. And so I guess I would think through that, whole vaccine option, if that's what they feel they need, is that another tool in their toolbox, and making sure we're conscious of providing that scaffolding for everyone, which then kind of loops my thinking to our littlest, our 3K and 4K, and knowing that some of those kids are still in our building. And I don't know if you have thoughts on that and how that might, work, seeing them. I know some of them are, sometimes in a different area than the other kids, but they're still in our buildings and there is some interaction with them. But knowing that we've had such great success, like Ken said, is because I think of what we've put in place, and knowing that we want to get to an optional spot. If we reach this hump of wherever it came from, then, it would be worth a chance to say, give it to the high schoolers who have had that opportunity. I think my concern, knowing that there was that break and then Halloween, like if we have that after winter break time, I feel like that's a comparison to that break we just had. And would we come back eliminating some of those tools that we have for people and then find out a few days, a week later, that we're kind of in that same spot? I think through that as we've had this jump in numbers here. But ultimately, our goal is to be in person, and to have our kids in person getting a quality education. And so with that being said, we have to stop and think what our whole district is going through and endured since the beginning of the school year and the last couple of days. Like the students, as a mom and a teacher before, they're concerned about the kids that are gone in their classroom. They ask where they are, that is a disturbance to their day. And the teachers, and not just teachers, but our administration who are filling in for the teachers, like that's a disturbance to their day. And all of the time and work that they're putting in is huge. And so I think that we want to make sure that we're thinking through the process really well, because it's draining for them. And I know how much effort that they've put into keeping us in person, and not only that, going back to the disturbance piece, and we love that they're helping, but that's not the kid's normal teacher. And the kids, are just learning a little bit differently because it's not their normal teacher. So just thinking through all of those little pieces as we make our decision and thinking about what is best for our goal, keeping them in person.
This is not an easy decision, and I have not taken this lightly for the last year and a half. But as I look at this, we have a number of tools available to us that we didn't have a year ago, we didn't have 6 months ago, and that is, namely, we have testing, and I've always thought that was a pretty critical component to be able to determine the direction that we're going. And now that we have vaccines available for all of our students, at least 5 and up, I am feeling more comfortable, and I also think that the other protocols are still in place that we have in our buildings, and trying to maintain distance and having contact tracing, so we know. And I think that this district has done an amazing job on the contact tracing and understanding, and certainly Dr. Olson and Tony Zastro have worked overtime in trying to understand where the transmission is there transmission, and that sort of thing. I also think that a plan like this provides some certainty. And we have a metric, and we can argue till the cows come home what the metric is, but we have a metric, and so that there is going to be an understanding of that this isn't arbitrary, that there is a finite thing. So, are there any guarantees? Well, I'd love it if there were. there are no guarantees. This seems to be reasonable. I support it. I encourage my colleagues to support it as well.
And I'll hop on with Bob's comment as well. We've got to put a date. I mean, a metric is a great thing. And if we come back from winter break and we see the 2% go, then we'll remask. And I feel that that is necessary. But we've got to put I feel that we've got to put an end date, because we just will, I mean, following the county data, following then the state data, we've got to put a date on it and then a metric. So I support the plan as well.
I think if we had a better sense of how many people are vaccinated and how many people are actually getting tested, that would help, because then we would have some firm numbers to know what percentage of our population actually is vaccinated and is regularly getting tested. In the absence of that, I think the only thing to protect the majority of people is to keep the masks on.
Please, please.
And I think to counter that, the vaccinations, it doesn't, for me, doesn't depend on the number of vaccinations, it's the opportunity to. And that's.
But the virus doesn't care if you have a chance to be vaccinated.
I'm sorry?
The vaccine, or the virus doesn't matter if you have a chance to be vaccinated. We have to actually be vaccinated for it to be effective.
But it's.
I mean, the opportunity is there.
Exactly.
We don't know how many people are actually taking that opportunity.
Right.
And that's
But my personal opinion is then it should be on, for those that choose not to, then that those that choose not to should, I mean, are taking a risk, and then that's their choice.
But we know that there's breakthroughs even in people who are vaccinated. So the unvaccinated people are putting other people at risk.
I would ask if you would please refrain from shouting out. We have a pretty good sense that there's a variety of opinions in this community. I think the speaker articulated a number of them. We are not oblivious to that. And so disagreement doesn't mean not listening. So please.
So I guess my question,
Would you please, sir, be quiet.
My question and thinking that I've kind of gone with this whole time, and I know I've heard you say, Dr. Olson, that you're seeing it a lot of from parents until just recently, because I was always thinking, we've got a lot of crossover between, siblings at different buildings or things like that I just was trying to be conscious of when thinking about end dates, because knowing that just because my child's at the high school level doesn't necessarily mean that's going to, help my whole family who also has a kid in 4K. Like, just trying to think through all of that. And I think that's where I've gone back to that. I want to make sure everybody's toolbox is filled before we pick that end date. And I think that's where I go back to, I understand that the high school is, and they've had that option, but, several of those high schoolers could have siblings who aren't. And so just to make sure that all of our students have their toolbox as filled as they can, making sure that that end date, in my opinion, matches so that everybody can have that safe toolbox. And I go back to that in my brain. To keep them all in school.
What we see right now, right now we're seeing a variety of family cases. There really isn't always a rhyme or reason as far as who tests positive in a family. So I guess the trend that I've seen is, usually it's a parent or some family member. Sometimes one or two of the kids test positive, and then maybe the spouse and one or the two kids don't test positive. And so it's not, I don't think I've seen too many cases where it's been mom and dad and all of the kids. It's been just a mixture. So I don't know if we're, using we've still got a high school here or an elementary student there. You would think that if one person in the family tested positive, that it would end up, affecting the rest of the family members, but it really hasn't. Even among moms and dads, it's kind of interesting to see. And sometimes you'll have a parent and all the kids are still at home and none of the kids will test positive out of the family, though the parents are still keeping them at home. So it's really, I mean, that's what's so tricky, I think, about this, is if there was like a tried and true way that COVID worked, it would be a lot easier. Going back even to the after Christmas thing, I don't know if you remember last year, so many schools were preemptively shifting to virtual instruction after Thanksgiving for 2 weeks and after Christmas break. We chose not to. We weren't sure what was going to happen with that, and we didn't see any increased cases during those 2 time periods. And I think this year too, especially with Christmas, you're still seeing kids around, like a lot of immediate family members. I think this past couple of days was, more of an anomaly, a lot of interaction just in the area. But I agree, with Amy that, I think it's presenting that opportunity, and then moving on at the half of the middle school and the high school level, that opportunity's been out there for, it's been for a good 9 months now. So, and DHS and CDC will be publishing the vaccination status in greater detail. They are adding that to their website, so they'll be able to break it down by age group. But honestly, I think across Wisconsin, you're going to see some communities that you'll never see that vaccination rate go up. Here in Dane County, of course, that is going to be a higher level, but it's just kind of, I think, hit or miss depending on where you live in the state and what your beliefs are. And at some point, I think we're going to plateau. So,
I guess, can you talk and tell me more about, okay, so right now we have the middle school who has shared spaces between kids who've had that option who haven't. And then that kind of brings me to the later on, we'd have that shared space in the elementary school with, the 3K, 4K that haven't and those who have. Tell me thought process through that.
So the reason why we're looking at splitting the middle school, 7th and 8th grade are on one floor. They're basically, for the most part, self-contained on that floor, except when they go to specials. 5th grade is in a cohort model already, so they're in their primary classroom for a good portion of the day, a little over half of the day. And so just honestly, walking through the middle school and being up on that 7th and 8th grade wing, you are not seeing a lot of face mask implementation. It is a constant battle to remind students to wear their face masks above not only their mouth, but on top of their nose. And I'll go back to that. We should have seen, because of the way that they're wearing those right now, probably should have seen more spread, more transmission than what we've seen, but we haven't. We've had some very low case rates at the middle school right now. As far as 3K, 4K, 3K students are in one classroom for a couple of hours a day, and that's it. They really don't intermingle with anybody else. They're doing a lot of speech and language things in those classrooms right now, where just being able to hear and articulate, I think, is important. 4K is very much the same way, for the most part, self-contained throughout the day. They're only there for 3 hours or so, and then they go home. Even still at the elementary, the kids are in their own classrooms. They have designated areas on the playground where they play. So even at recess, those classrooms are not mixing within each other. So really, the students, for the most part, are still in that cohort model, not as tightly as they were last year, but still functioning within that classroom area. So when you think about mitigation, just even to catch any kind of transmission at that classroom level will be important, which is why I put the classroom level metric in there, because I certainly wouldn't want to see an outbreak at a classroom and then it spreads to the whole school, and then all of a sudden the whole school is required to mask. If we can contain that at a classroom level where we're seeing easily, okay, now this is child number 3, child number 4, and it usually goes fairly quickly when we start to see that, then, okay, we don't want any more transmission. We can mask at that classroom level to prevent any further transmission, hopefully. But still think the key is getting tested quickly if you think you're sick and not coming to school if you think you're sick. That's really the key to preventing any kind of transmission.
So
for
before I call the, oh, you have a comment, go ahead. No?
I would agree, there is, in the near future, coming a point in time when we have to say certain things are not going to change, this is the world we're in. The vaccination rate for Jefferson County, it got to 50%, but that was after a long time. I mean, it sat at 48% for a long time. So I'm kind of reconciled to the idea that certainly it's people's choice. That's probably where the rates are going to hang around, So then I think, okay, what are the other things that can factor in here? And I think they've been very well talked about here with among the board. The piece I'm struggling with right now is we've just had a significant increase in cases, and from what I can see, the case numbers in Jefferson County for the past 2 to 3 weeks aren't plateauing. And maybe they are, and it's a higher level, and I have to accept that, kind of thing. That's kind of another piece of where does it settle in terms of the transmission rate. But I'm just struggling with the fact that we've had an outbreak essentially, and around Jefferson County, even though we've learned a lot, and I think it is a strong plan overall, it just doesn't seem like the timing is quite there yet. I don't know.
Well, I would suggest that if the increase were to continue, the plan has the backstop of not being implemented until it reached the lower level. So that increase would solve your dilemma by the plan not being able to be implemented as far as being mask optional.
Or the plan is implemented, it's just masks would be required if more than 2%.
That's what I was,
Yeah,
thank you. I
yeah.
was trying to say that it was having a hard, hell of a hard time doing it.
So
It seems like a big risk to wait to, we hit that 2% mark before we decide to put masks back in place.
I guess then my question would be, then when?
When the numbers start going down instead of plateauing and slowly incrementing.
Okay.
Which is like any disease in the past, right? Either natural immunity takes over, or enough people get vaccinated that the virus doesn't have a host, and we're not there.
Is there anything that, for those that are hesitant, is there anything that you would offer to change this plan that would make it acceptable?
To make masks optional beginning November 15th?
Make the plan in front of us, is there something in there that's worth talking about?
I go back to the date, and like I said, I think that's my biggest thing, just because I want to be able to have all of the kids have their toolbox filled if they feel that that's what they need as families. And I think, I agree, we have to put a date on it, and I think the date is the piece that's getting me. I want everybody to have that opportunity before we put that date, because you're right, we might get to that date and our numbers are still high, so we're still going to be in the same place we are, but at least we now know that everybody's had the opportunity to make it happen.
So then would at least you be willing to approve the 7th through 12th grade? Or the middle school after?
And that's where I am toy with the idea, and I appreciate, what you had said about, we don't know. I mean, it's totally rolling a dice, I think, of saying like, yes, you're going to get it. No, you don't. Yes, yours will be bad. You'll be fine. And I think that's where I have a hard time rolling the dice for the kids here because we want them in school, and knowing that if we can pick a date where we can confidently say, as confident we can be with something we don't know, we've given you all of the tools, or you've had the opportunity to have all of these tools. Now, it's been presented, and yeah, I don't know. I struggle with that.
What about making it mandatory until January 3rd and then reassessing after the holidays? If we're looking for a number, a date, just... So you were asking for options? I'm just saying.
I think that's a long time to wait to come back. Talking with even the Dane County schools, who I consider very conservative, I think some of them are looking at a similar plan. So,
That was the date you had for 4K through 6th grade. That's why I just... That's the date that you had for 4K through 6th grade?
Correct.
January 3rd?
I mean, nothing is set in stone. Boards need to meet, but I just know some of them have been talking about that, just because it does give enough time for those that choose to be vaccinated at that level to get vaccinated and come back.
Okay. Okay, I guess we need if there is no objection, I would ask for a roll call vote.
On the proposed motion?
On the proposed motion, that is correct.
Okay.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Brianna Beslick,
Nay.
Dawn Delaney,
Nay.
Ken Imers,
Nay.
Robert Temperio,
Aye. Motion fails. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the approval of adult meal price increases.
Districts operating under the SSO food service program have been advised by DPI to revise the adult meal pricing. So with their calculations, the minimum adult lunch price should be $4.65, and the adult breakfast price should be a minimum of $2.56. That is all.
I move the board approve the adult meal price increase for the school lunch program as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is a requirement, correct?
Operating under the program, yes.
Roll call vote, please.
Brianna Beslick,
Aye.
Dawn Delaney,
Aye.
Ken Imers,
Aye.
Amy Litcher,
Aye.
Robert Temperio,
Aye. Motion carries. The next item is the greenhouse. And we had a discussion during Dr. Olson's report on the greenhouse, and so I would entertain a motion for its approval.
I'll move to board approve the greenhouse and site work pricing proposal for the amount of $452,647 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Clarification as to the funding. If I understand correctly, we have ESSER funding and then utilizing our reserve or fund balance for the balance.
Correct.
And to kind of emphasize the point that you made as far as the drainage, stormwater runoff in that particular area, if you're not familiar with the high school building, as we did additions coming down around, that was the last thing left, and it was kind of an afterthought back there, and it is really something that has needed attention for a long time, and I think that the greenhouse project has brought that up, and this is really the time to deal with that feature as well. So for those of you that remember when the parking lot was mostly gravel at the high school, this will be the last gravel parking, driving area that we have. So anyway, I think it's a good idea myself.
And I support that because the projections for the enrollment are, I mean, this will be the last major thing needed at the high school, at least for 15, 20 years. So.
Correct, and I don't think the greenhouse was maybe taken into account when, that next phase was discussed. But you're right, I agree. I think our space is very adequate for quite a while.
Okay, other comments? Hearing none, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Don Delaney.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, the next item is a geotechnical contract. Back in the day, this was also called soils engineering. Now it's gotten dressed up a bit. This relates to the south side site, and the testing involved will determine the ability of the site to support development in the future. And whether there's a referendum now or sometime in the future, this would be good information for the district to have.
I think it'll help us get a better accurate, or a more accurate, probably depiction of what costs are going to be out there, so we don't really want any surprises after we would potentially put a referendum question on the ballot. So this will help us know what is under that soil.
So entertain a motion for its approval.
I move the board approve the geotechnical proposal for Giles Engineering Associates, Inc. for the amount of $28,380.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Amy Litcher.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Don Delaney.
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio.
Aye. Motion carries. Now, one of the more rewarding parts of the agenda, this is a number of gifts that a very generous community has provided, and I would ask for a motion accepting those gifts.
I move the board accept the following gifts and thank the generous donors for their continued support of the students and programs of the Lake Mills Area School District. A $100 donation to the Rec Department from the Bank of Lake Mills. A Junior Optimist Club sign donated by Aaron Kuehl of Kuehl Property Maintenance with a value of $120. A $240 donation to the Rec Department football program from Brad Rosick. A $250 donation to the elementary school for supplies from the Tyranina Ladies Club. A concert snare drum to the high school band donated by the Lake Mills City Band with a value of $545. A $750 donation to the boys basketball program donated by the Lake Mills Hoops Club, and 500 children's masks donated to the middle school with a value of $1,150 from Melissa Ruglitz-Walker, Gracelyn Smith, Vanessa Vargas, Lane Smith, and Rachel Davies, members of the Sunshine Reach nonprofit organization.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions? Again, our thanks. Roll call vote, please.
Amy Litcher.
Aye.
Brianna Beslick.
Aye.
Don Delaney.
Aye.
Ken Imers.
Aye.
Robert D'Imperio.
Aye. Motion carries. As we look to future agenda items,
We have two reports in December. One, the auditor will be here and present a report from the findings from the audit, and also give you the chance to ask any follow-up questions. And then school perceptions will be here to present the results from the survey.
And we will have either a second reading or a report, which would constitute a first reading of the committee policy.
Correct.
And also note that our Finance Committee meeting will be on the 22nd of November. 3 o'clock, right?
Correct.
Got it right. Motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We can agree on something. That's great.